All right. Hey guys, welcome to Disenthrall. Today we have a really special live stream for you. We have guest Victor Pross on to have a discussion, debate on open borders, anarchy, ethics. Should be a really great talk today. Welcome, Victor.
Thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate talking about this subject, especially these days.
Yeah, I think it's a very important conversation. I think people have tried and maybe failed to have it well multiple times over the past year or so. So I look forward to, honestly, like, I want to acknowledge up front that you and I are both good people with better intentions than probably the vast majority of the people in the world. And so I want to let you know that up front, I think that you're an anarchist, and I think that you have good intentions, and whatever positions that you say you have, I think that they're coming from a good place. I want to say that up front. There's no animosity or ill will from my side. I also respect a lot of the work that I've seen, and I've followed you for a while. So I just want to kind of say that up front.
Thank you. And you're referring to the art or the anarchic teachings.
Sorry, say that again?
Are you, in regards to my work, you're referring to the artwork, the paintings, or the writings?
I like the artwork, but I
okay.
also really enjoyed a lot of your writing. I just
Okay.
I like the way in which you have conversations. I just wanted to kind of up front, sort of dispel any conflict or confrontation, or I'm not here to attack you. I'm honestly here to, like, the purpose of this for me, and it may be for you as well, is to find the truth, not to sort of win a debate. Like, I think if we find truth, whatever that is, even if I'm wrong, we both win. Like, truth wins. That's the point of these conversations. So
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, like a discussion / debate like this, it's not a zero-sum game. If somebody walks away with a different perspective or something to think about, at least, I think that's both win, and I don't see a debate or discussion of this type as one wins and one loses. So it's maybe I can be educated on something that I'm just not getting, but I have thought long and hard on this subject before just spewing and going out there with my position, with all the slings and arrows that have come my way. So yeah, thank you.
yeah, and I've this will be the first time I've really kind of broached this topic heavily on this channel. A lot of people I've trusted over the past year or so have taken up, I think, what we'll find out is your position. And when people I trust take a position, I like to slow down, that I disagree with. I like to slow down and give them time to explain it and to understand it before I, come out in opposition or start speaking my opinions. So with that said, I want to do exactly that. I think I would like to give you kind of the complete floor to tell us exactly what your position is. Like, what are your motivations, and what your sort of prescription is for what you are wanting to happen. Are you, what are you encouraging people to do? What are you doing to meet those goals?
Well, yeah, no. One thing I can say from the outset, just as a preliminary comment that deals with this whole subject, and that's in regards to Muslims and religion and the overall approach to this, which I think serves as an intellectual roadblock to a lot of people when it comes to religion and Muslims. It's important to stress the fact, insofar as we're talking about like third world or Muslim integration into a Western country. I'm not talking about like some European who wants to move to the United States to set up business. He just wants to move to another country for whatever reasons. I'm not talking about a doctor in India who wants to move to the United States. I'm talking about the migrant crisis, what's called the migrant crisis. And I'm really surprised by how many intellectual activists, libertarian or anarchists, who are just so completely ignorant to what's going on in Europe. It's just truly astounding. It's truly mind-boggling that they really don't have a clue of what's going on. lot of the terrorist attacks that have taken place, you know, oh, it's a false flag, you know, and false flag in people's minds, like there's actors, you know, it's just all one big state propaganda theater show, you know, and this is just ludicrous to me. This is absolute lunacy.
Yeah, everything can't be a
I can
false
say,
flag, right? Not everything is a false flag. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, talkers at the Grande concert, I forget her first name, but the pop star singer asked families of the murdered 8-year-old girl and the 20-odd other people, you know, about their acting lessons. Okay, so it's just ludicrous beyond the pale. But just to get back to my original point when it comes to the issue of like Muslims and religion, it's important to say from the outset that a Muslim, in the literal translation, is a man of Islam, or a person of Islam. It's someone who attempts to live by the philosophy of Islam, and this is the thing that just drives me crazy with people. A Muslim is a person. Islam is a social political system. It's the ideas that concern me. Muslims aren't a race. Muslims aren't a race. So you hear all these charges of racism. Racism or race does not apply. Muslim is a person. There's black Muslims, there's white Muslims, there's yellow Muslims, there's plaid Muslims, there's brown Muslims. There's every type of race is represented in a person who could be who converts to the Islamic religion, like the famous singer Cat Stevens, if you know who that is. I don't know if I'm dating myself there. Now, the second point is that Islam is more than just a religion. You know, people have, you know, like a very touchy-feely feelings when it comes to religion. You know, some people are, you know, like die-hard atheists, and they see religion as a plague on the earth. But there's other people in the anarchist libertarians that have a certain amount of respect, you know, when it comes to religion, you know, freedom of religion expression and things like that, you know, and people are sensitive to the issue of racism, and, you know, and that's fine. I understand that. But it's not applicable here. It's not, it really isn't applicable here. Islam is much more than a religion. Fundamentally, it's a full-blown socio-economic system that requires integration of church and state. Church and state. It requires the law of the land to be the law of the religion. Those laws, in my view, are from the Dark Ages. It's a grotesque ideology. I'll say it straight out, that we should treat the Islamic religion / statism or political system just in the same sense that we would treat any other form of collectivism or statism. So that's break ground there. I'll pause to get your feedback on that.
Yeah, no,
Does that make sense?
I pretty much don't disagree with, I think, anything you just said. I think there's a lot of dangerous aspects to the belief that people commonly mischaracterize as a race, known as Islam. I think that many of its members are dangerous, have dangerous ideas, and are a threat. The only question I would have is, you know, so not all Muslims, hashtag not all Muslims, right? So there are peaceful people that have bad ideas. There are peaceful people that are not threats because they hold bad ideas. What are your thoughts on, you know, how that applies to this discussion?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, another thing too to say is that, you know, I don't blame a significant bulk of migrants who aren't dangerous, of course, who are simply looking for a better life. But I do blame governments who have imposed this insane border policy with no plan whatsoever, to assimilate millions of migrants into a Western secular culture. And another thing too is that 80% of them are not even Syrian. Okay, only 1 in every 5 migrants claiming asylum in Europe is from Syria. Okay, just to get that out of the way. Now, in regards to Muslims, and not all of them are, you know, self-detonating killers. Okay, you know, Of course, of course. It is said that Islam is a peaceful religion. Actually, Islam, if you break down the word in its etymology, means submission. And it's a common bromide to hear that most Muslims a minority of extremists practice violence. That's like saying that the white supremacy must be perfectly fine since it's only a tiny minority of races that hurt anybody. But it's still a problem, though. It's still a problem. Now, just to draw this point out a little bit further, how people get all trapped up in this is just a small minority, just a small minority. So therefore, what? That there's nothing to worry about? Can you imagine an anarchist society, a free society in which is productive and peaceful and where property rights are in place, and which I believe is entirely possible, by the way. It sounds like a far-flung, far-fetched idea to a lot of people, but I think that a totally free society is possible. But this property rights in place overall, it's peaceful. There's no, there's still violence. There will always be violence. Violence is here to stay. It's a part of the human template, but at least it wouldn't be praised. It wouldn't have a moral sanction placed upon it. It would not be centralized into the small handful, into a relatively small handful of people. Now, take this anarchist society. Can you imagine that if all of a sudden, lo and behold, we find in our midst a serial killer? Okay, well, you know what? We wouldn't say, well, hey, it's not a problem. There's 33 million people in this anarchist society, and there's only one serial killer. It's a small minority. It's a minority of one. It's ridiculous. Of course, it's a problem. Islamic fanaticism and the violence that's been taking place in the last 3 to 4 years has been, they've been shorter intervals where there's been some incident. This is a problem. So
it's significantly more than one. Yeah, I agree that it's significantly more than a small minority. There's a ton of these militant, dangerous Islamists, right? So I'm with you. I'm still with you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Now this does not explain why religious violence is largely endemic to Islam. Look, Islam has never had any official recognized tradition of pacifism. It's from its inception in the 7th century. Okay, and throughout its history of warfare, it's been an integral part of the Islamic theological structure since the time of Muhammad. Islam has been considered considered warfare to be a legitimate expression of religious faith. It has accepted its use of violence for the defense of for Islam. You can read at greater length or listen to Sam Harris if you know who that is. He's a scholar on these matters. He knows much more than I do.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Now, a large number of Muslims are decent people. That's good. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. There are many Muslims who have fled their countries in search of freedom, but they may still refer to themselves as Muslims. They've assimilated to their new Western culture if they've moved to the United States or whatever. But on the other hand, many Muslims are not good people, and by which I mean that they're not necessarily murderers. There's a full 20% of Muslims who sympathized with the London subway bombings, sympathized with in the sense of like, well, they had it coming, the people. I can understand their, the bomber's case in this case. That was an ICM poll. There's 31% of younger British Muslims say that the London bombings were justified compared to the 14% of those over the age of 45. This is a Pew research. 26% of younger Muslims in America believe suicide bombings are justified. 35% of Muslims in Britain believe suicide bombings are justified.
Sorry to interrupt. Did you say 26% of young Muslim men in the U.S.?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. This is according to a Pew research, right? So this is not just and look at the the recent concert bombing in the UK at the Grand Day concert.
Mm-hmm.
He was born in the UK, became radicalized, you know. So he's calling to his religion, you know. He's as I said, the Islamic religion has never gone through a reformation like Christianity did.
Yes.
Right. So never mind like the large influx of people from these countries who are coming into the country. A lot of people tend to think that they're truly appreciative, that they're going to respect the Western canon. Like all of a sudden, if you take an entire human being and you drop them on different soil of land, that they're going to immediately adapt and assimilate to that culture. I mean, it's ridiculous. Take yourself as a model. If you were dropped over in Iran, are you going to assimilate to that culture? Are you going to be a part of its without any kind of like moral dilemma or any kind of like a psychological dilemma or any kind of like a major, almost next to impossible philosophical overhaul? Adapt to that culture?
I'm having trouble adapting to American culture with my current beliefs, so I would say that would be even more difficult.
Yeah. So, you know, I could imagine. I could go on with like another, example of like what we could do. Did you have a question, or did you want to? Because I feel like I'm just like spewing into your ear.
No. I mean, okay. It's good. I mean, we can't have the discussion if I'm not clear on what. So I guess the question would be, because I'm totally with you so far. I'm right beside you on everything you've said. I don't disagree. I'm a little bit terrified about the 25% thing. I'm gonna have to go look that up. Not that I don't disbelieve you, but that is a very dangerous number of people that are already here, right?
Don't take anything. So don't take anything what I say on faith. Yeah, like all the research is there.
But the question would be, so given all that, even ad arguendo, let's just assume that we're on the same page. Therefore, what? What is Victor suggesting we do because of this?
Well, really, the reason why that I've been outspoken about like this subject is there's a lot of anarchists who are intellectual activists. They have a large platform. You have the Stefan Molyneux, you have the Larkin Roses, you have the Jeffrey Tuckers, and then you have tens of other people who, like yourself, have a podcast. They have a platform in which they're heard, and we should not take the issue of open borders as some kind of like intrinsic anarchist doctrine. It's ridiculous. Closed or open borders, or immigration for that matter, it's all statism. It's all statism. Okay.
I'm still with you. Yeah, I agree.
Why the hell are anarchists praising open borders as if this was some kind of like holy trinity? You know, you have property rights, you have individual rights, and you have open borders. Look, I can understand the whole thing about the whole argument, the Larkin Rose rhetoric of what is the arbitrary lines in the sand or whatever, or things like that. Yeah. Well, or the imaginary line rather. Well, there's an imaginary line surrounding property rights, but what gives proper rights its validation? If you adhere to the whole Lockean, John Locke approach to property rights, one whose labor comes from one's efforts through one's thinking.
Yeah, so like
it's an extension of
first
themselves.
use.
Exactly, right. Yeah, but what divides my property from somebody else is it's an imaginary line only, and it's not an imaginary line in the sense of what validates and constitutes property rights. But when it comes to the state, though, okay, this whole thing of the artificial imaginary line. Look at the citizens. It's the citizens who have built up the country, who have created the enormous wealth of a Western civilization. That wealth and all of that property property, and everything that's been achieved in an industrial, advanced, civilized society belongs to the people, to the citizenry of that people. Now, I'm definitely of the position that the ruling elite, the politicians, they have contributed zero to the process. They've proven to be nothing but an impediment to the advancement and to the productivity of people. They've been a plague on the face of the earth ever since the inception of however far the state goes back. They have nothing to do with it. But the fact of the matter is that they've taken this large stretch, this geographical slice that's called a country, and they've claimed ownership of it, improperly so. But the fact of the matter is that they've done that. We have to accept that as a fact. Okay. Now, take your personal property, your home, Patrick, your home. How would it be? How would it bode with you if you had some kind of like a dictator or politician or whatever, or some thug with a gun?
I do.
Who calls the shots on who comes into your living room?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have those. We have politicians and cops now that can call the shots on when they can break in my door. So I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And and not just deciding who's in, but who's to stay out. Who's permitted to come in? Who's permitted to go out? Just bring this down to a micro level from the macro level. Just bring it right down to your own life, your living room, and your home. Okay, the country is your living room. The country is your living room. So this whole issue of open or closed borders, like open is therefore intrinsically good, closed is intrinsically bad. It's ridiculous. When I had this discussion, or if you want to call it a discussion with Lark and Rose, you know, the question of open borders just became like a holy thing, just completely isolated from any other consideration. It just became like this glowing little ball of virtue. Open borders. It's an objectivist, or excuse me, it's an anarchist epiphany. You know, it's a god figure. Open borders, right? Irregardless of everything else that's happening, as far as he's concerned, it doesn't matter if large influxes of people from third world backward countries are infiltrating and invading Europe. It wouldn't even matter if the government outlawed guns, the complete gun confiscation. It doesn't matter if the welfare role, if it's a welfare state. As far as he's concerned, and even if these people have proven to be dangerous, even if they're outspoken in their beliefs, it doesn't matter. If you close that border, you're a statist. And this is ridiculous to me.
So sorry to interrupt. So I've had I'm building a list of things I want to talk about, and I think it's getting so long I'm going to start losing things.
Yeah.
So I think arguing for closed borders is the closed borders is just the conclusion of the actual argument. So the actual argument is closed borders are not. Sorry, arguing for open borders. Excuse me. Closed borders are not NAP compliant, non-aggression principle compliant. And so because they've had this discussion and this argument about using violence against peaceful people walking across one of these lines is not NAP compliant, therefore closed borders is not NAP compliant, therefore anarchists are against closed borders. And then I would point out the difference between, so any action, like the ethics of any action can be decided by who owns the property involved, and is the action in question NAP compliant, non-aggression principle compliant. So in the case of my house, I own the property in question, and if somebody attacks my property or my family on my property, then it's certainly NAP compliant to defend myself. I do not own the country. I do not own the borders around the country. So I cannot use the NAP. I cannot use defensive force to defend something I don't own. Well, I guess I could, but it would be kind of aesthetic. And even worse, A peaceful person walking across unowned property, if I were to use force to prevent them from doing so, would be a breach of the NAP. So the action is no longer NAP compliant. Therefore, closing the borders to peaceful people is not NAP compliant. Now, I'm specifying peaceful people because that is the critical distinction that is lost when we talk about state-controlled borders. A state, the U.S. government, whatever government we're talking about, doesn't really have the tool set, the capability to place a filter on the border that magically identifies the evil ones, the ones with the dangerous, bad ideas, and use force to stop them. Because if they're evil, dangerous, bad people, then, you know, defensive force, even on unknown land, is fine. It doesn't matter, they're bad people. It's the peaceful people that I'm here, I guess, today to sort of defend. I have friends in other countries that I want to come visit me. They don't need to go through the violence at the border, the force at the border to come visit me. That's immoral. So does that bring up anything in your mind? What do you think?
Well, yeah, it just goes to show you that statism is an evil on all fronts.
Yeah.
Depending upon closed or open borders, I'm against either. I want a free society. Now, the case of, like, let's say that you and we wanted to go and have a beer, and you were to come here, or I was to go there, going through all the rigmarole and the permission, maybe I denied. We saw some of your videos, Victor, or we saw some of your videos, Patrick. We don't want your anarchist scum ass in this country, you know, or
right.
whatever.
Which may happen.
And it's an injustice.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an injustice. That's an injustice of, like, of the borders with and closed or open. It's statism. You have these people who are calling the shots. Now, in the case of the open border as being the ultimate good, the ultimate intrinsic good, that's also what I equally challenge as I do so-called closed borders. This cuddly, girly, pathological altruism it's an ugly bitch. Look at the current situation in the United States and in Western Europe has nothing to do whatsoever with freedom and benevolence when it comes to the mass migration from the third world countries. It has nothing to do with cuddly teddy bears and good intentions. It's forced integration, plain and simple. More specifically, the authority to admit or exclude should be stripped from the hands of the central government. That is my actual position.
Can you tell me a little? Can you describe for me what you meant by forced integration?
Sure. This is at the behest of politicians who are bringing in large influx of people who audibly are going to be dependent upon the welfare state. It's not like they're being kidnapped and imported at gunpoint to enter into the country. Either the various European country or various countries within Europe, Sweden, France, what have you, have rolled out the welcome mat, the open borders, and the large influxes of people. Not 80% who aren't even Syrian are coming into the country. A great deal of them are from countries like North Africa. Now let's take a concrete reality of some of the disastrous effects of this open door policy. Take, for example, the Cologne, Germany. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
You said Cologne, Germany?
Yeah.
No.
Well, yeah. If you haven't heard about it, I'm not too surprised. During the 2015-16 New Year's celebrations, there was a mass sexual assaults. I'll give you the rundown.
Oh, I did hear about this. Yeah, but go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead and talk to it anyway. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No. Well, for the benefit of the listeners, Germany was a shocking wake up call had a shocking wake-up call that where Europe really is importing a real rape culture. A series of sexual assaults perpetrated by immigrants on New Year's Eve in Cologne, Germany. That was like, I can't remember some of the details. I can't remember. I'm just trying to recall some of it. Yeah, there was a mass sexual assaults, 24 rapes, numerous thefts in Germany, mainly in the Cologne city center. German police reports that 1,200 women were sexually assaulted, and an estimate that at least 2,000 men were involved, acting in groups. All of the incidences involved women being surrounded and assaulted by groups of men on the street. One woman described being groped over 100 times during a 200-meter walk, and many women were unable to even escape their attackers. Police reported that the perpetrators were men of Arab or North African appearance. Now, how did the pro-refugee men respond to the station? Okay, get this. Listen to this.
Probably something along
She
the
said,
lines of we need to be, we need to have solidarity, or
words.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's very revealing. Like, don't blame the migrants. It's completely improper to link a group that appeared to come from North Africa with the refugees, even though many of the refugees that flooded into Germany are North Africans. So what do you mean don't lump the North Africans in with the refugees? Okay, so, they were part and parcel of. This is what they're trying to conceal from. It's all being presented as fleeing citizens from Syria are just looking for refuge. That's not the case. This is a humongous lie going out.
Well, there was a lot more than there was a lot more than 1,000 immigrants from Syria, right?
A lot more than 1,000?
Yeah, there was like, I don't know.
Yeah, well,
hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, no,
millions.
I don't know what the exact stats are.
So
80% are from other countries. 80% are from other regions. Look at all the video. You don't have to take anything I say. All the video footage shows the men to be Arab. Victims of the crime reported that the perpetrators were both African and Arab. But according to Henriette Recker, the mayor, this had nothing to do with the refugees. What? What do you mean it had nothing to do with the refugees? It wasn't the Germans going around raping each other on that night. And even though Germany is experiencing a rape epidemic like Sweden, in and around the migrant camps in Germany, we are to understand what we're being told. This has nothing to do with the refugees. Now, this is an example of forced association. This is open door forced association. You know, one of the things that's great about being a thinker, and is not to think in compartmentalized terms. Okay, what are the specifics? What are the specifics? You cannot take open borders in a statist society as some ultimate good, irregardless of everything else that's going on. Well, who are these people coming in? Is there a welfare state? Have the citizens been legally disarmed? What's the specifics? Does that make sense to you?
So I think ethics are universal, like from a deontological sense. I think context does not, like there isn't a different set of ethics for one context than another. So if the initiation of force is wrong now, it's wrong yesterday and tomorrow and 1,000 years from now, and in Germany and in America and on the moon. So far I'm still with you. Like, there is a threat. There are dangerous people. Not all people, obviously, but I don't have an understanding of what what the therefore is. What is Victor suggesting be done? What is the actions you're calling for or are taking yourself? Because if we're just talking about the dangers of Islam and immigration, I don't think we have a debate here. I agree they're dangerous. Is there some action that you're taking or that you're calling for people to take? Because if there's force involved in that, then maybe we do have a debate.
Okay, well, look at since you just mentioned ethics as being universal. I'm not saying anything that that belies that.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that yeah, we should have principles, but we should have pragmatic exceptions. I'm arguing strictly from principle.
Okay.
Strictly from principle.
Okay.
Okay. Now,
good.
And I know that you're groping to gather all this of what you're saying. I know that even as we're speaking, I know that the wheels are turning. Let me help you if I can. Let's do a little experiment on something. Let me ask you a question, and perhaps all of this will come to a greater light in your mind.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's do it.
You ready? Okay. Are you married, by the way, if I may ask?
Yes, I am.
Or I have a girl. And do you have children?
Wife and kids. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let's bring this back to a micro level and step away from the macro of politics. Let's bring this right down to your life. Okay. You're in your home. There's a home invasion. You're there with your kid and your wife. You love them. They're your life. Okay. Now, you're put into a situation, because this is an evil bastard. It's a psychotic. Puts a gun to your head. Doesn't necessarily want to rob you. He's just a psychotic person. He forces you to make the decision between you, or forces the decision of who he's to kill, your wife or your kid. If you say fuck you to either scenarios, you're all dead. You're all dead. Mm-hmm. This is the horror. This is the evil that you're facing. Now, let me ask you, what moral principle can you extract from that as to the correct course of action that you should take? What would be the moral that you would refer to as to guide your act to do in such a scenario?
Someone's using force on me and mine, so any action I could think of, from lying to kicking him in the crotch to shooting him to, I mean, there is no moral imperative on my part to do anything that I mean, I can defend myself using whatever means I choose to in that situation because they brought force onto me.
Yeah, no, of course you can. Of course, there's the case of self-defense. Of course, there's a very sharp black and white divide between me, whatever series of continuance that might exist between what constitutes initiatory force versus retaliatory force. But I'm not talking about a kick-ass Stallone movie here. I'm talking about the moral.
Well, I live in Texas, so we go Stallone in those situations.
Okay.
Here.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but all the advantages are against you. Okay.
Yep.
Let's say that it's 3 or 4 armed people.
Yep.
And they got guns up the wazoo. You are now. The question here is just like is between all of you dying if you don't comply to the choice of killing your wife or your kid. What moral principle do you refer to as to what you should do, leaving self-defense to the side? Because you know what, self-defense is not a moral imperative. One also has the moral imperative to flee their captors altogether.
Sure. Without
using any force against them.
Yep.
Right. But I'm asking you though, what's the moral principle that you can extract from such a scenario?
Are you talking about like
would it be moral to kill your wife? Would it be moral to kill your kid, or would it be moral to not answer such a question and you all die?
I don't think there's any like positive moral obligations generally, so any answer I give wouldn't necessarily be good. It wouldn't be like a good thing in that situation for me to answer one way as opposed to another. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? If not, let me know.
Okay, you're all dead. You're all dead now.
Okay.
You got to answer the question, or you're all going to die.
But
what's the moral thing to do?
My point is, no matter what I answered, the answer I chose wouldn't be an ethical actor. It wouldn't be. It wouldn't carry ethical weight because I didn't initiate force in the situation. So no matter what I answered,
exactly.
So no matter what I answered, it wouldn't be a problem, right?
Exactly. Now let's take this from the micro level and let's go back. Let's walk over to the macro level now of politics. Okay. Closed or open borders. The ruling elite and politician, lawmakers, etc., they're calling the shots. They're calling the shots on either scenario. There is no intrinsic good when it comes to open borders, because decisions are being made without your consent, without the consent of the people, who's to come into the country and how many, and who's not to come into the country.
I think
it's all statism.
I think I see where you're going. Yeah, and I'm not arguing for open borders as the end, as the reason for arguing. Open borders is the absence of force, which is what's important to me. So if open borders is the result of the absence of immoral force, then yeah, I'm for open borders. I'm not for open borders because open borders. Open borders is a statist paradigm anyway, like you kind of started out telling us about. Like, in the absence of a state, there are no state-controlled borders. In the presence of a state, the state-controlled borders are generally immoral because they do initiate force on peaceful people. So.
Right. Yeah. Now, do you see the problem of just taking open borders, a statist construct, a statist concept, a statist apparatus of open or closed border, like we're talking about open or closed within a statist paradigm. These terms apply to a statist paradigm. Okay, so you have force no matter which way you go. If you stop people at the borders from entering, force is being used. If you import a large influx of people and without any kind of like vetting or screening, in the same sense of that you would choose what people are to come into your home, all of this is out of the hands of the citizenry. Okay, you have forced association, or you have like the denial of freely chosen interactions. You have force no matter where you turn, left to the right, doesn't matter. When you have a status, when you have a state, when you have
when you say forced, sorry to interrupt, when you say forced association, are you talking about like the welfare checks, like I'm being forced to give money that they then take in welfare? Is that what you mean by forced association?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and necessarily so, because if they're migrants or refugees, they're it's forced automatically because they're refugees. The expense. Look at the expense that it's going to take for these thousands of people. Thousands and thousands are automatically fodder for the welfare. How is this an advancement? Increasing the welfare, advancing and expanding the welfare state. How is this toward freedom and liberty?
So are there immigrants that won't be on welfare when they get here?
Not you're talking about immigrants from where?
From anywhere into any country. I'm kind of talking in the generalized sense. You know, are there Mexican immigrants that come to America and don't take welfare? Are there Syrian immigrants that immigrate there and become upstanding, peaceful, hardworking members of society?
Yeah. Look, I've got nothing against with standard immigration. Standard immigration, like it's with the birth of the United States, when people naturally wanted to move over there, we're in search of a better life. Of course, you've had scores of thousands of hundreds of people who simply just wanted to flee from their wretched condition of whatever tyranny that they were facing, and to move to a plot of land where they could raise a family and prosper.
So do you think that it's a violation of the NAP to use force against those peaceful people that aren't going to take welfare to prevent them from coming in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Depending upon the situation, it depends. But once again, once you have a state, a state at the center, at the epicenter of society, it renders null and void property rights and ethical decisions that the citizen actors would take. Just like in the same sense that you've been paralyzed with the home invasion example that I gave you. You know what? And if somebody answered that question of like, they had a short circuit and they said, well, my wife or the kid or whatever, would that be a case of where like they're morally wrong? We got too much of this focus on what Stefan Molyneux called the citizen on citizen attack or slave on slave attack, and that's exactly the type of thing that I've been facing. I'm not the bad guy in this scenario, for Christ's sakes. I'm trying to draw attention to all of this. I'm trying to give a different perspective on this issue, as opposed to the anarchist open borders, intrinsic good no matter what.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, that's not my position. Let's be clear. My position is not that open borders are intrinsically or universally good in and of themselves. So that's not Patrick. Maybe that's other anarchists. I am against the initiation of force, against those people that we just talked about. That would be evil. That would be something I can't support. And if there was I'm still unclear. I'm not trying to like beat this into the ground. I'm just trying to understand what are you calling for?
Don't worry about it, Patrick. I've been thinking about this for a year and a half now.
Cool. So like, what actions are you suggesting people take? What are you doing differently in your life? Like, because until we get to actions, we can't really discuss whether this is a good or a bad position to take. So are you calling for people to vote to have the borders closed? Are you voting yourself? Like are we just discussing? Are you just having these discussions with people? Because if it's just discussions, then again, I don't really.
Well, yeah, I understand. Like the fact that I want to bring this different perspective and to challenge this view that's one step that I'm taking.
Okay.
Now, it's in terms of political activism, that's a whole different beast. But for those libertarians who are coming from a good place in terms of wanting to advance the world towards liberty, but they still see the government in life. For the small minarchist libertarian, I think one of the correct way to proceed it, I think, and just as a tentative hypothesis, is to decentralize decision-making on immigration to the lowest possible level, so that we can approach ever more closely the small government libertarian position in which individual property owners consent to the various movements of people. You can take Switzerland as an example. Before, that is, the European got involved in the immigration policy, Switzerland approached the kind of system that we're talking about here in terms of bringing it down closer to the individual. But in Switzerland, before the European Union got involved, as I say, localities decided on immigration. Okay, and immigrants or their employers had to pay to admit, and their employers, they had to have job prospects ahead of time. The immigrants or the employers had to pay to admit a prospective migrant who was also responsible in case there was any harm that was done. A certain amount of risk calculation was to be taken. So in this way, residents could better ensure that their communities would be populated by people who would add value and who would not stick them with a bill, a welfare bill, with a laundry list of benefits.
Right.
Okay. Obviously, in a pure open border system, as it is now, that's taking place in Europe, the Western welfare states could simply be overrun by foreigners seeking tax dollars, and that's what's happening right now. So, as libertarians or anarchists, we should, of course, celebrate the demise of the welfare state. There's some people who are advancing that argument as well, that it's going to be so burdened that it's just going to completely implode and collapse upon it. And a lot of people, think that that's something to be celebrated then. And if the influx of the migrants from the third world leads to that, they consider this a good thing. But to expect a sudden devotion to laissez-faire or to anarchism or to the non-aggression principle to be the likely outcome of a collapse of the welfare state, with a society that's still embroidered intellectually speaking, into its ideas as the base of their culture, is to indulge in a naivete of an especially preposterous kind. The fight that we ultimately have to level here is one of ideas, not political activism. Okay, you can burn down the churches, doesn't mean you're going to get a bumper crop of rational atheists.
I was thinking about something you said earlier on in the interview that matched up with we have a meetup group here in Dallas, Texas, where every week we get together with like-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and we talk about this stuff. And one of the things somebody said at our last meeting was they pointed out that all the other sort of major world religions that have done evil have had their reformations, and you mentioned that Islam hasn't had their reformation. And what I found was interesting is this is the last one. This is like the last violent religion that once we get it to its reformation, there's no major violent religions left causing problems. So if we're going to talk about like geopolitical like motivations and what we want to have happen, we should be doing everything we can to get them to their reformation as quickly as possible. And I think the US government is doing nothing if not interfering and slowing it down by motivating them to continue to do the garbage that they've been doing for the past 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, 500 years, I don't know. History immemorial.
Yeah. Well, I really am take this whole my entire approach, Patrick, is one of ideas and philosophy. I've studied philosophy for 30 years, and to jump over the barrels of a culture's values, of a culture's dominant philosophy, and just to hurl over all of that, sociology, philosophy, just to go to politics, which at the end of the day is just the cumulative effect of the different branches of philosophy. You have philosophy first that precedes politics, and politics is just the net result of the dominant philosophy that has come to be accepted by any given culture, whether it's East or West. Look, there's a sickness taking place right now in the culture. The culture is intellectually and morally sick. Look, the politicians consider the children who were killed in the London terrorist attacks or at the Grande concert as collateral damage for the sake of a larger agenda.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And now it's the agenda that's important here. And as you know, if you're going to make any, well, I'll make a few ways. They're completely expendable. The citizens. The citizens mean nothing to these, to the agendas that they have. The agenda could be political or it could be philosophical. Now, the politicians are of a social experiment called multiculturalism. Now, this is something that we have to take a look at. Now, here I'm speaking of, when I say multiculturalism, here I'm speaking of the multiculturalism that stands for a movement prominent in the academic humanities departments, the one which is fundamentally a philosophical attack on objectivity. Multiculturalism is a creation of leftist, Western, nihilistic, postmodern philosophy professors who have launched an attack by promoting cultural relativism, which holds that all cultures are of equal value. No culture is better or worse than any other. So logically, this serves to devalue Western values such as reason, science, productiveness, and each individual's right to life by equating it with such irrational, destructive practices of primitive, mystical cultures that subjugate women and perform female genital mutilation. As far as I'm concerned, multiculturalism is an evil ideology driven by evil intentions, and it's imperative that defenders of individualism understand this. It's essential to understand the nature of these ideas that become laws later on through a certain transition period. So
do you think that we sort
this
of
is a doctrine?
Do you think that it's easy to sort of like project too many of our own virtues that we arrive at from other perspectives, like anarchy, libertarianism? It seems like people have a tendency to project too many of the virtues that we gain from those sources onto what we call Western culture, because like Western culture had women oppressed for a long time. Western culture had slavery until recently, right? So while I agree Western culture is the best in the world right now, it's not like the culture itself. Again, just like open borders is not like innately virtuous. Western culture is not innately virtuous. It just, I think right now happens to be the best one, or the most advanced in terms of liberty, right? But culture is not justification for defensive force. Like an attack on a concept called culture is not something that can trigger like a real world defensive use of force, right? What do you think?
Well, yeah, it's important to understand when I extol the virtues of Western culture, I'm not talking about all the permeations and the fighting and the groping and the struggling throughout the period, where you have completely antithetical ideas impeding on the progress. The advancement of freedom has been a long, torturous, bloody road. Okay, the whole thing, like for example, the whole thing of trying to tame this ancient monster called the state by a series of checks and balances, and was a result of an enormous amount of intellectual rigor. Take the United States, really, as a country that was founded on an idea. The mistake is that you can't tame this monster called the government. It's an institution of initiatory violence right across but they tried, they failed. And I'm not necessarily talking about the founding fathers. They were thinkers and politicians, which we don't have that today, right? Thinkers who are politicians, but they were thinkers as well as politicians. They stood on the shoulders of giants above them. To name just a few, would be John Locke. Another would be Aristotle. Now, when the academic multiculturalists attack logic or science as ethocentrism, they decry capitalism and extol traditional peasant life when they propound the yoke of all moral perspectives, so long as it's a group perspectives from where they're coming from. And they are discarding the philosophical foundation that enabled human beings to prosper on this earth. Now, the Western values is not something that's encapsulated in white people. It's not something that's encapsulated in a stretch of land. It's a force of certain central ideas that constitute Western culture. Not all the imperialism that have come from Western cultures. So when I speak of
imperialism is part of Western
values,
culture too, right? To be fair.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that
nation building and all
that.
The
West is some.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm just talking about a certain set of ideas. You could take a basic abstraction and just strip away all the non-essential irrelevancies, and just focus on what gives the definition, which gives definition to a word. You could talk about horses and give it a definition as a mammal that walks on four legs, but you also have the problem that also speaks to a lot of other species as well. You have to break it down to the crystallized essence of what constitutes Western culture. That is the scientific method. That is the overturning of the shackles of medieval theocracies from hell. So focusing on individual rights, on the natural application of individual rights, which is property rights. All of this is a Western, or is all that I'm speaking of are these ideas. I'm not talking about a stretch of land. I'm not talking about white people, and I'm not talking about politicians in the Western Hemisphere who are statists and imperialists. I'm not talking about that. So yeah, of course we can. The West has done bad things. Yeah, I know that, but the people aren't getting the point of what constitutes Western culture. And any society has a basic philosophical framework that constitutes that society. The customs, the ethics of the people, the politics. And there's a world of difference between the East and the West. And I would say, for the most part, regardless of all the nice Muslims that are out there, it doesn't eradicate the fact that these are two antithetical cultures. They're oil and water.
So when I asked you what you do, what you didn't say was, well, I'm telling people to go vote to close the border. You didn't say, I'm telling people to go form militias and defend the border themselves. It sounds like you just want to have the discussion. Is that accurate?
Well, what am I supposed to do? Action-wise, like the action-wise is the spreading of ideas. Just the fact that we're talking on this channel, taking advantage of this marvelous invention called the internet, with the dissemination of ideas
brought to us by Western culture. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that that's not doing anything. There's a lot of libertarians or anarchists who jumped on the Trump train, because they just think that political activism is going to carry the day. But here we have it, but it's fundamental ideas that ultimately set the culture. So if my small microscopic effort to educate people, or at least to advance ideas that they can entertain, just as Aristotle said, you can entertain an idea without necessarily accepting it. And there's a lot of people who've sent me messages and thanked me very much for giving them something to think about, or where I had changed their mind. This becomes contagious. It's spreading. Why do you think that there's a crackdown on the internet? Why do you think that there's a creeping, crawling censorship that's taking place? Because the ruling elite and other corrupt individuals know that their greatest enemy is an alert mind. Right. Insofar as like political activism, like just narrowing all of this down to voting, no, that's not going to be enough at the end of the day. That's a whole other discussion about like voting and Trump and blah 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 blah. We can have it, or if you want to, like, in terms of activism or whatnot. But spreading ideas is also activism as well.
Oh no, certainly.
Spreading these ideas.
Certainly, but spreading any idea, even bad ones, is not something I would use force to stop. So I think we're still in agreement here, Victor, which is awesome. Do we now
get to just
Kaysen's over here? How are we on time?
We are about an hour in right now. Okay. It's about 3 o'clock. And I do have a question from someone, if you guys would like to hear that.
Shoot.
Okay, cool. So Yos writes, are y'all anarchists, full-blown anarchists, or minarchists? And I asked him for a definition of that, and he said, an anarchist is those who consider the state to be unnecessary, harmful, or otherwise undesirable, and favor instead a stateless society. So that's the definition of anarchy. And minarchist would be that, but with the exceptions for the state for things like defense and health care. He was a little confused as to y'all's positions.
You want to go first, Victor?
Okay. Well, that was a mother lode. Can we break that down to one specific question first of all, for cognitive digestive chunks?
Yeah, you got it. Are you more of an anarchist or more of a minarchist? Some people were a little confused as to everybody's original position.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no. I'm a full-fledged Rothbarian card-carrying anarchist.
Preach it. Yes, same here, basically. So, initiation of force in any situation is wrong. Military, healthcare, borders, you name it.
Yeah, I understand even greater the everything that the state touches turns to shit. That also includes immigration. Immigration is a statist program. Was another part to that question too?
No, I just wanted to. I asked them for the definition, so I had them specify that. There is another question in here. If you guys want to roll into that,
sure.
Alrighty. So if you think back for a moment, Victor, you asked a question of a hypothetical. You posed a hypothetical. If somebody was inside the house and they were saying, choose your wife or your kid, and kind of the which is the moral action. What would be the ramifications if instead of them being inside the house, there are people on unowned lands that nobody owns? What are the potential ramifications of that? They wanted to get Victor's information and then Patrick as well.
Are we talking within the framework of a statist paradigm or an anarchist utopia?
Let's clarify. Let's clarify for the remainder of this discussion that we're not talking about utopian anarchist anarcho-capistans. We're talking about.
I'm speaking tongue in cheek.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah, is the question within the framework of a statist paradigm or a totally free society?
I think they're referring to what we got right now. What we got right now.
And what's the question again?
So what are the can you stop somebody from crossing? It's basically, can you stop people from crossing the border, but in particular on lands that you yourself do not own?
I don't have a problem with it. I mean, the government might. I mean, there might be people who are living in the mountains of Montana, living like what do they call that? Those type of anarchists living the agrarian or. I don't have any problem with it.
So we don't own the borders.
Maybe I'm not
appreciating
appreciating
the I think is
what's that?
What they're getting to is we don't own the property that makes up the border around the country. So if we don't have the right to go and use force to stop people from crossing land we don't own, then we can't give that to someone else called the government to go do that. And,
no, exactly. Of course, I agree with that. Yeah, and okay. I hope that the questioner isn't making the proposition that that's my standpoint.
So you're for open borders?
No, of course not. Yeah, you know this whole thing. I'm still getting these challenges of like these Larkin Rose type of challenges of can you stop somebody from walking from dirt A to dirt B? You know, like and if I answer no, then aha, you know, like it's not that simple.
Well, I mean, you didn't answer no. I mean,
yeah, I answered no, of course.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, so you said, of course I can't.
Who is this person? Yeah.
Right.
Of course not. Of course not.
So what are you calling for?
They're taking the position that I'm a closed borders kind of guy. So they want to bring this down to a grandmother who just wants to walk from dirt A to dirt B. Are you going to tackle her, Victor? Like I know what's behind the question.
Like I know we build this as
you're a statist for closed borders, so and you're going to attack this person who just wants to walk from one stretch of land to another. We can see how ridiculously simplistic this is, and doesn't belie anything that I've so far.
I'm finding it difficult to I can't locate something to disagree with you on because I mean you're not calling for action that breaks the nap. It seems like you just want to have this discussion, which is totally. Good.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why this is very hard for a lot of people to understand. You know, like I've been overwhelmed with these statist acquisitions, and you're for closed borders. You want guards at the gate and blah blah blah.
Well,
that's statism too.
Let me ask you directly: do you want armed individuals protecting the borders around the country? From people with bad ideas coming in, you know what I mean? Like, do you want the current border paradigm where peaceful people are not allowed in?
Okay, now here's where I'm completely consistent with the non-aggression principle and the overall philosophy of closed or open borders, as I've established, all of immigration is a statist paradigm. Guards at the borders and whatnot, I am not going to run to the state as a protector to the very same people who are the perpetrators of the greatest crimes that have ever been committed on the face of the earth, which is the government, the people who are causing all of these problems. Of causing or behind forced association or the force behind impeding peaceful people who would care to interact with one another. They are the perpetrators. I'm not going to make an appeal to the guy who's holding a gun at my head as to, who's forcing me to either kill my wife or my kid, or we all die. Not going to make appeals to these home invaders, to the three. I'm not going to say, let's set up a vote on this. Let's have a scholarly discussion on this. You know, I'm not going to seek medical attention from the person who breaks my legs. Okay, so forget about the state. I am not running to the state to do jack shit. Now, in regards to the migrant crisis and whatnot, if the faucet off, if they happen to stop this insanity, this Angela Merkel fucking bullshit, multicultural influx, this invasion, where there's definite physical harm coming to the citizenry of those regions of Europe, and not to say nothing of the enormous tax burden that these people are going to be taking on with the influx of millions of people who are not going to be working, productive people, who are not going to assimilate to the culture, who are hostile to the culture, and who aren't integrating. There's no melting pot. They're in sectioned off enclaves. If they stop this insanity, I would say, well, good. Well, thank God for that. But I'm not counting on it, though. I'm not going to go out and vote, and don't try to reason with people who use this type of force. They're not listening. They're not listening. So
yeah, I agree.
All the Lawrence Southerns out there that are politically active and get on the Trump chain and do this, and we can turn this into have a free society within our lifetime. She wants it in her lifetime. It's not going to happen. So if hopefully we can settle this whole question of me being a statist, which is just not the case.
I think we just settled.
I'm a thinking anarchist. Yeah. And I don't take anarchism as some type of Catholic catechism where you hold up open borders like it was an anarchist canon.
Yeah, open borders, like you said, outside of the context of the owners of the property in question is. Yeah, I agree with you. We're definitely on the same page there.
Yeah, just to, I want to make another point, but unless there's somebody else who has a burning, itching question in the chat thing, I don't know if there's...
Yeah, we got another one. What if freedom rights for the uninitiated? Can you explain what the NAP means?
The non-aggression principle. It means it is always wrong to initiate the use of force on peaceful people. What does that mean? It means don't start none, there won't be none. It means never, don't throw the first punch unless there's a credible threat, an immediate credible threat. It means it's always immoral. It means it's wrong, immoral, evil to be that initiator of force on a peaceful person. It's pretty much the clearest, most beautiful, universalizable principle to live by that I have yet to. I mean, I haven't found anything better than that. How's that? Victor?
Universalizable. Great.
You have any thought? Did you want to say anything, Victor, on that?
Well, yeah, no, I agree with Patrick. Even to draw the principle even further is not it's not just a matter of like initiatory violence, like physical violence. It's much more than that, because you could have two professional boxers in a ring.
Yep.
Where they're expected to pound the shit out of each other. One of them is going to be the first one to throw the punch. The real thing, the real violation of the NAP is when it's against somebody's will.
Yes.
Okay. And how you violate somebody's will is not by feeding them not giving you're a candy vendor at the movies, and I'll have a small Coke or no, I'll have a bag of popcorn. Oh, did you want to drink with that? Oh, you're using force against me. You're bringing your capitalistic things like that, or trying to persuade, what is it that people consider a violation of, like the NAP, of like this microcosm aggression, or something that's a zeitgeisters go on about. No.
Oh, structural
violation
violence.
Of individual. Yeah, structural violence and all this.
We don't want to get into structural violence.
And stretched from like an elastic to encapsulate all of this. No, you just have to break it down to goes against somebody's will, and how you violate individual rights or individual rights or the NAP is by backing it up with physical force. That's the only, against somebody's will, and backing that up with physical force. Physical force, of course, constitute just out and out theft, plundering, murder, rape, assault, and fraud, which is an indirect use of force.
You can tell we're both anarchists because we both want to talk a lot about the NAP, because it's so exciting. To have a principle to live by that clears up so many problems. What you're saying is like consent is morality, is something I say often. So like the boxing analogy is because both of them consent to beat the shit out of each other, so there's no problem. There's no beef.
Going back and going back to the migrant issue of where like the if you were to ask like an anarchist who takes this whole issue of open borders being like an intrinsic good, and if you were to ask them, because I have to look at the populations in the Middle Eastern countries, not just Syria, but like the surrounding regions as well, the mass influx that's coming not just from Syria but all over sections of the East. If you were to ask them, like if they were to go by their principle of open borders, like if you were to ask them how many is enough, like no vetting, they're all refugees or they're economic migrants, and that's what's happening right now. By the way, is like there's a large influx of economic migrants or just for the free shit. Okay, does this not constitute a violation of the NAP for the and the governments of these regions are importing this mass influx of economic migrants? Is this not a violation of the NAP for the citizenry who are to hold up and finance these people? Is that not a violation of the NAP?
There's so many violations involved here. Like the taxation to pay for the welfare is a violation of the NAP. To accept stolen goods from the government is a violation of the NAP. It makes you a co-conspirator in the crime of theft. So I agree with you.
Yeah, if you bring a vast number of people into a country, the majority of whom are utterly dependent on the welfare state. Another thing too is who the hell do you think that they're going to vote for? The whole Clinton and Trump thing, like the rigging the votes, and like in the sense of illegals, just for want of a better word, where there's a very lax immigration laws and they're building up their voting base, the left, the liberals, they are. And as for genuine refugees, it's going to be 100% guaranteed that they will be dependent on the welfare because they're refugees. So even there, never mind these poser refugees who are nothing more than economic migrants. Now, if you want a free society, bringing in hundreds of thousands of people who are ideologically against a free society is not a good idea.
Okay, so now
I don't know why people can't see this.
So if I had the right to make the decision on where strangers could move their bodies, then I could have an opinion on if it's a good idea or not, I guess is what I would say. So like, is it a good idea for someone in charge? Probably not. I agree with you. Almost definitely not. I agree with you. But no one should be in charge of that.
Yeah, look at in an app, just like being forced in the situation of killing your wife or your kid, there's force no matter what. Open borders, there's force. Closed borders, there's going to be force. Force is inescapable here. Inescapable. Absolutely inescapable.
Well,
and I'm not even somebody who's calling for closed borders.
Let me.
I'm not turning to the state.
Let me disagree with you probably for the first time there. You can only make that statement that there's force either way if you group, all the individual immigrants together, because there are immigrants in there that are peaceful and will not take welfare and will not initiate force on you. So to use that defensive force against those innocents is immoral. So you're creating new violence that didn't exist before when you do that.
Yeah, Yeah, and it most certainly is an ethical and intellectual challenge for sure.
Okay.
I happen to be of the view what's taking in Europe right now in terms of the expansion of the welfare state, the expansion of state powers, the negotiation, the entirely artificial creation of a mass of people of how to interact with each other, how they're to interact with each other, and with whom they're to interact with each other in a room called whatever the country is. There's nothing natural about this. It's the outcome of private property, private individuals interacting with each other. It's entirely artificial. It's entirely imposed. Now, but I happen to believe that, let's say that you have a lemonade stand that's operated by a 10-year-old, one of Obama's drone strikes. You know, the idea of closing down the little girl's lemonade stand over drone strikes or whatever other statist incursions you can come to mind are far graver. I'm sorry, like in that situation, I'm going for the girl's Kool-Aid stand to be shut down over a drone strike on an let's say an innocent American who just happened to cross Obama the wrong way. The turning people away at the borders, it pales in comparison to what's taking place right now. Now, if you were to ask an open borders anarchist, when is enough enough? Is there any cap to this influx? Now, from his standpoint, he would have to answer no. And how many people are we talking about? What are the populations of the Middle East who where the numbers will escalate so long as this open border policy is laid out like a red carpet? When does it end? When does it end? The state dependence influx from all these regions, when is enough enough? And well, a so-called anarchist with an intrinsic approach to open borders would have to, if he, so far as he wants to be internally consistent with his own principles, would have to answer, there isn't enough. Whoever wants to come in, comes into the living room.
Yeah.
Your living room.
No amount of bad individuals crossing the border ever imbues me with the right to initiate force on peaceful people crossing the border.
Yeah. But you got to ask yourself, what, you know, what's worse? You know, like not necessarily that the moral responsibility is all of a sudden falls on the shoulders of the person who's being aggressed against. Nobody could fault you if, like in that horrible situation that I set up, that if you killed your wife, nobody's going to morally fault you on that. But what are they going to say? Oh, you should have chosen your kid. That was the moral thing to do. Like, how do you deduce that?
No. It's like there's no cash in my wallet to give you. I don't have the ability to use force on peaceful people. Like, full stop.
Now,
I just don't have that capacity to be consistent. You know, as a philosopher and an anarchist, I simply don't have the capacity to initiate force on peaceful people. So if there was a giant lever I could pull that would drop a filter down on the borders that stopped the bad people and let the peaceful people walk through, I would not have any problem with anybody calling for that lever to be pulled immediately. Fine, sure, but there is no such lever. There's a plethora of other free market solutions to these problems that are being prevented by the government. And if you think government is effectual, which is questionable, but if you think government is efficacious in these matters, you could certainly lobby just as hard for the government to get rid of welfare, or to block immigrants from receiving welfare, or to cut this problem off in a way that only affects those parasites that we're worried about, or the violent people that we're worried about, right?
Yeah, well, that's another thing too. That, like, Michael Shanklin made the prominent anarchist position is to be in opposition to the welfare state. Okay, I'm fine with that. Sure, like in an anarchist capitalist world with all property privately owned, immigration would be up to each individual property owner to decide. Right now, as things stand, immigration decisions are made by a central authority. Okay, with the wishes of property regarded. So and so taking is to oppose the state and the welfare state, intellectually speaking. Of course, I'm all for that. The full thrust of my philosophical weight is going to discrediting and dismantling the state, at least intellectually, not militarily, but intellectually, to invalidate it as any kind of like a legitimate institution. But certainly the state, let alone the welfare state, is not going to evaporate overnight. Okay, it just isn't going to be so. Not without, if they turned off the faucet on the welfare state overnight, and I mean quite literally overnight, the pandemonium and the chaos and the wreckage would be of Herculean proportions you couldn't even imagine. This is something that has to be through a span of generations. If you go with the Molyneux approach to this, it's going to be generational. I think that's a very
the old school Molyneux
thing.
approach. I think the new school Molyneux approach is a little bit more immediate.
Now, however, to stop this insanity that's taking place with the migrant crisis, that can stop practically within a week. Okay, so the welfare state is a problem that's not going to be solved overnight. The politicians do not have to do what they're doing right now when it comes to the immigration issue and the economic migrants. They don't have to do that. So that's something that we first, I think, should focus our attention on as a real problem. Yeah, but in spirit, though, with Michael's approach of attacking the issue of the welfare state. And if you don't have a welfare state, people who do go migrate or immigrate to a certain country are doing it on the basis that they understand that they're to carry their own weight and they have to be productive people. There is no host population to feed on when you have a welfare state. Then sure, immigration wouldn't be such a problem. But with a welfare state, it definitely is a problem. Does that make sense?
Yes, all initiations of force, welfare state, border security, that's all a problem, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm talking about the priority of what supersedes one or the other. There's a lot of people who are concrete bound too, compartmentalized in their thinking, and they go, well, there's the welfare state, and then there's immigration. Okay, the welfare problem, the welfare state, that's a problem. But immigration, the two don't have anything to do with each other. Let's see, I'm an anarchist, a principled anarchist. Am I for closed borders or open borders? Let's see. Oh, I know, open borders, because it's separate, has nothing to do. There's no connection with the welfare state and and immigration. No, these two overlap. It matters. What's the context? What's the full context? What are we going to add to this scenario? Citizens are legally disarmed?
Can there be, Victor, in your opinion,
becomes even better now, right?
Can there be a valid application of the non-aggression principle if even one innocent person is aggressed against?
Sorry, could you ask that again?
Can there be a valid application of the non-aggression principle in which even one innocent person is aggressed against?
Is this a question you're asking, or is that a questionnaire?
Yeah, it's a question for you.
Okay, maybe it could be rephrased because I'm not quite understanding it. Could there be?
So can we apply is there ever a time when we could apply the non-aggression principle to a set of actions in which even one innocent person is being aggressed against? So, and call it valid. Can we ever apply the NAP to something in a valid way in which even one person... The question
sounds like, the question sounds like, can we square into a round circle? Like, maybe I'm just failing to appreciate the intent or the meaning of what the questioner wants to ask. But the way that it's phrased, though, it sounds very odd.
Okay, so if even one innocent person
is to imply no victims,
right? If even one innocent person will be aggressed against through some border control plan, someone that consistently follows the NAP couldn't support it. Question mark. Do you agree?
I'm going to have to take a pass on the question because I'm not quite understanding where it's coming from. Look at, once again, like maybe the person just walked in the middle of the discussion, but like I said, I am not calling for anybody to go to the state as a solution for a problem they created.
Okay. Sounds like we're good then. Kaysen, do we have anything else?
Yeah, we got two of them right now, so I'll start with one and then we'll come back. So Kavi Williams writes.
Hey, Kavi.
Hey, let's see here. We kind of had to do a little paragraph to shorten it. But if you have, say, 10 property owners who own all of the land in the shape of like a donut, but the donut hole, the center, is unowned, say a pond or something, can you ethically build a wall around the unowned land? And Kavi, let me know if that's not the right kind of phrasing for you.
Yeah, this is an important principle. Walter Block has clarified it. So if it's unowned land and all of the property owners in the circle of the donut agree to build a wall around it, yes. But in a way, that's kind of them taking ownership of the unowned land because they're separating it from nature and basically becoming the exclusive user of the resource. But if they're still calling it unowned, like they're not claiming ownership of that center of the donut and someone else wants to come along and claim it, they wouldn't, as non-owners of the donut hole, they wouldn't have the justification to use force to prevent that person from homesteading it. And once he homesteaded the donut hole, they would not be able to ethically prevent that person from accessing his property. Otherwise, they have stolen his property.
I think the intention is that 100% of there's no access to that land without crossing owned property, I think.
Yeah, so to bring it to like the country level, you know, I own property here in this spot, rightfully. No one has the right to build a wall around my property restricting access to it, because that is post facto theft of my property. If you remove control of my property from me, that's the same as removing. You've built a wall around my wallet. That's what a thief does when he takes my wallet. He removes my access to it.
Yeah, and I would agree, and I think that's very well put, Patrick.
Is there anything else you want to add on there, Victor, or do you guys want to go straight into the next question?
Straight into the next question.
All righty. So one guy named Trash Dove, love the name, writes, let's see here, 25% of those entering accept and believe that violence is acceptable. So if 10 people came into Patrick's house and 2.5 of them were to bring guns, initiating threats, while the other 7.5 guests wanted to chat, would he allow them in all the time? And then there's an if yes and an if no.
Yeah, so private borders are perfectly fine to enforce because I own the property. So going back to what I said in the very beginning, you know, the ethics of an action need to be determined by who owns the property in question and are the actions in question NAP compliant. And if I own this property, my actions to kick anybody out I wanted are perfectly NAP compliant because it's my property. The United States borders are not my property.
Yeah, and we can see that with the state in place that property rights really becomes null and void in a way. You have eminent domain, you have property taxes, and you have sections from other, and you have people from other sections, other imaginary lines, putting their hands into your wallet. But
I would say that
violation of the NAP according to the open border anarchists, though.
I would just be like really annoyingly precise to phrase that. I agree with what you said, but I would be annoying when I said that property rights still exist in their valid form now. It's just that we have a massive aggressor that's trampling all over them. You know, we still have our rights. They're just being, you know, destroyed.
Yeah, well, null and void in the sense not philosophically invalidated, but like for practical implementation, they're being impeded.
Yeah, I told you. Yeah, I was just being annoying.
And there's lots of ways to violate the NAP, like the welfare state, for example.
Yes.
Open border anarchists.
Yep.
I'm soliciting the Trash Dove for follow-up right now. He hasn't said anything just yet.
So if I'll just put out a call for commenters. If there's anybody out there that has comments on what we've talked about here, please put them in the comments. If you know someone that would like to discuss this topic with me further, please contact me either through the YouTube channel or our Facebook page. for on either side of this issue. If they are, let's say, calling for people to petition the state to lock down the borders, I mean, we can have that conversation too. Victor, do you have any thoughts? Any final thoughts? Any?
Yeah, no. Or are we wrapping up when you say final thoughts? There's another question, or?
I think we're about done, unless you have another topic you want to cover.
I just put out the last call for final questions for anybody, so I'll let you guys do a couple little bits and see if there's any other things, and we'll close it down over here.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there's more people if they had any questions, but yeah, it's been a pretty long discussion as it is.
A great one. I've enjoyed it.
Questions they should.
Yeah.
Any more questions in the chat? Yeah.
I don't think yet.
No, not just yet.
I would just say, as a final statement for me, I think it's been an awesome discussion. I hope to have more of them with you in the future on whatever topics come up at the time. I think you're a good thinker. I think that we have shown ourselves to be able to have a back and forth conversation about something that we may or may not agree on, and further the cause of truth. So thank you, Victor, for being here.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and listen, like ever since I opened the door in this type of discussion and being spoken on it, I had no idea what to expect. I thought that there would probably be like disagreements and a back and forth and things like that. But to tell you the truth, I've really been taken aback by people that I thought that were friends. Michael Shanklin has called me a Republican douchebag. To Larkin Rose, I'm a statist. I've been ambushed in that. When Josh World Alternative Media set up the whole debate that I was to have with Larkin Rose, I even said in private messages that I've heard a lot of your podcasts. You make very good points. You're doing great work. You make it very accessible to people who are not necessarily fine-tuned to philosophical acuity, but he brings it down to earth, to the street level, understand level, and that's a wonderful thing, where you don't have to be like some highbrow academic who completely alienates the common person, let's say, right? And where where academics are talking with one another. So I commend them all of that. But that ambush, that grandstanding, I think was very shameful. These are serious topics, for Christ's sakes. Anarchists should be having these type of conversations, and really we got to break this mold of. It seems particularly on this subject too. The issue of spanking is another issue. Is that there's another divide. We really got to break this habit of attacking each other, and to realize that the real culprit in the room is the state. So when you're being home invaded by 3 assailants who are holding a gun to your head, forcing you to choose between your wife, open borders, or your kid, closed borders, not and completely bypassing the fact that the perpetrators are the people to level the entire moral blame towards, and not to have the wife and the husband and the child arguing with each other, would probably be a good step in the right direction. Well, that's all I can say on this matter for now, I guess.
Sure, and we can continue the discussion if you come up with any other pieces to it that you'd like to talk about again in the future. So I appreciate everybody for watching and submitting questions, and thanks for watching Disenthrall and Victor Pross.
Yeah, and I do thank you. Thank you, Patrick, for us having a civil conversation on the matter. Thank you.
To your point, I think a lot of voluntarist anarchists are just always, we're fighting the world, literally, philosophically. So we're always sort of in that fists up defensive stance. And, it's important that we refine our own philosophy by, challenging each other. But we also need to realize that, when it's the world, our fists can be up, but when it's other like-minded people, like I tried to lead this discussion with, I acknowledged up front that we both are coming at this from a place of good intentions and a centered.
Oh, absolutely. We're not the bad guys,
right,
Patrick? You and I are not the bad guys.
I agree. All right, cool. Thanks, Victor, for being here. Thanks for watching.
Take care.